everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. Today we're looking back at the hot comics from May 7th, 2021, and I'm recording this on November 5th, 2021. As always, I give those dates so that you guys know when this information is most relevant, because the market's always moving and changing, as you'll see when we talk about these about the books on this list. We're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week from that week of May 7th. We do this so we try to understand, should we be chasing hot books? What factors made those books hot? What factors made those maybe cool off since or keep going up? So we all make a little better decisions about which books we choose to chase, which ones we're just patient on. So let's see what we can learn this week. We got 17 books to talk about. So let's dig into this list. First up, we have Lady Killer #1. This hit the list because we know there's a show coming to Netflix, and Blake Lively was attached as the main character for that show. So we got that casting announcement. So that is what made this book jump. Jumped up to a $75 to $125 plus for raw copies. 9.8 was hitting $350. Now it's a $60 to $100 book for raw copies. So kind of in the same range, but definitely down a little bit. 9.8 set in $2 to $225 on this particular book. So it's definitely down, a bit of an I'll be back. Pretty typical. We got news. The show's in development, but nothing's immediate. So that's very typical for this kind of option or casting news that it would drop back. Would recommend this as a really good read. I really enjoyed it. I read it back in the spring for the first time. It's an excellent read. So next we have Wind, or WYND #1. This is another James Tynion project, basically, and there was option rumors around this one as well. Don't know that anything ever came of it, but it caused this book to jump up to a $10 book back then. 9.8 was hitting $60, which is still pretty cheap for something with option facts going around it. Now it's a $15 to $25 book. 9.8 is a $90 to $130 book, which makes me think maybe eventually we did get option news that I just don't know about that caused it to continue to climb up a little bit. Technically it's up. You could call it a straight cash. I don't know at this price if it is or not. Still not too ridiculous, but probably a book I'd be patient on. I bet you could find a deal. Next, we have Conan the Barbarian #23, the first appearance of Red Sonja. I know people tend to like 24 because she's on the cover, but she's in like 12 panels, or she's in a bunch of panels. She says her name. This is clearly her actual first appearance. But this hit the list because of casting for a potential Red Sonja movie. So that news came out. Raw copies were averaging $300. A 9.6 went for $1,500. Now you can find raw copies in the $75 to $200 range. Although a 9.6 is actually higher. Most recent sale of that actually went for $2,000. So those slabs have continued to climb, but the vast majority of sales are raw copies, and they are down definitely a little bit of an I'll be back on this one as well. Great book. Character, maybe I might try to get the first appearance of at some point, but haven't ever prioritized, so we'll see. Next, we have Invincible #16. This is the first appearance of Angstrom Levy, who basically hit the list. This book hit the list because Robert Kirkman made an announcement that Invincible had been picked up for season 2 and 3 following the success of season 1, and he made a comment about he'd get to do this character. This is one of the main antagonists in the series, so that this character was definitely going to get to come. So that's what caused this book to jump. Raw copies were going for $60. A 9.8 hit $225. Now this has been pretty steady. It's $30 to $80, so you can definitely find deals on this and get it for a little cheaper. 9.8, actually, the most recent sale went for $400, but there's only been one sale in the last couple of months on a 9.8, so not a lot there to go on, really. Hate to make any kind of judgments based on just one sale, but raw copies are staying in that same range, been pretty steady, a bit of an I'll be back. So definitely enjoyed the first season of the animated series and looking forward to more, as I'm also currently doing a read through of Invincible. Hopefully we'll have our next round of that coming up soon on my indie show. Next we have Sweet Tooth #1. This hit the list for the second week in a row, and really it was on opposite lists from So it wasn't that it continued to climb, it's actually just on the opposite list this week from what it was last week. And this was all due to the trailer dropping for the show that has since come out and been out during the summer. Raw copies back then were going for 150 to 200, which is actually slightly down from what they talked about last week. Not much, but it was more of a 200 plus kind of thing last week. 9.8 though hit $800 plus for this book. This one is now a $50 to $125 book for a raw copy. 9.8s are going $450 to $600. There's still really good value on this book, just not near these peaks that we saw on the trailer. Even though the show was popular, it was a bit of a hit. Things have backed up a little bit as we've moved away from it. Pretty typical. Trailers tend to actually be the peak of the hype, even more so than the show coming out. So this one definitely turned into a bit of a trap if you paid those peak prices around the trailer, but still a really good book. Next, we're going to move into our covers. We have 3 covers this week. First up, we have Eve, #1, the In-Hyuk Lee 1 in 50. This is a pretty popular little series. I have not got around to reading this one yet. But this 1 in 50 of the #1 was going for $125 plus at release, which is not quite triple. So you're between double and triple ratio. You guys know my rule about that. It's almost got to get to triple if it's going to hold. Now, well, the only sale recently was 150, so it was triple ratio of a raw copy, but it's just the one sale. There's been 3 sales of 9.8, all went between 250 and 325. So this one appears to be pretty hard to find. Not a ton of these on the market, not a ton of sales, but still holding pretty good value. So this one kind of bucked the rule a little bit. It definitely has stayed up. It's been worth it, at least so far from those initial prices. Next, we have Secret Wars, Secret Love, #1. So supposedly the deal with this was it was kind of a hard to find Kamala Khan cover. At least that's the best I could determine with what they wrote and what I could find. So this has jumped up to a $30 to $40 book because it was hard to find. Well, there's a bunch of them now listed on eBay after people started paying for it. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. A 9.8s have been selling for 40 to 60. So yeah, this has definitely turned into a trap. Apparently it wasn't that hard to find after all. After people realized, oh, I can make some money off of this. So next we have Star Wars, The High Republic, #1, the Gabriel Del Otto variant. This book was going for $85 to $100 on the secondary market back in the spring. Definitely a gorgeous Del Otto cover. Now it's going for $30 to $50, so definitely has backed up. 9.8s are only going for $100 to $150, so a bit of a trap. We're going for less than half of what it was back in the spring, so that's definitely a trap. Most of all these High Republic books have backed up since, the release. We don't have any more details. If we get a details on a show, an animated show or a live action show or something, then there's probably this High Republic stuff will take off. I've really enjoyed it if you haven't been reading it, so I would recommend it if you're a Star Wars fan. Next, we have Batman #108. This is kind of a foil / comic buzz hitting on the list. This is the 1 in 50 Art Germ foil variant. This is also the first full appearance of Miracle Molly, a character that one of the few characters that Tynion has introduced that I am actually digging pretty much. Raw copies of this, though, were going for about 50 back in the spring. Now they're 25 to 45. 9.8 will cost you 125 to 200. So this one is backed up a little bit also, but this does appear to be the cover even more so than the 1 in 25 sketch cover that people are paying the most for of this Miracle Molly appearance, at least. Next we have Walesville #1. This is another bad idea book that hit the list. Basically this book at release was going for $25 to $30. People were chasing all of these bad idea books. When they come out, people tend to chase them. And here lately, almost everything other than that original, whatever, Hero Action or Hero something, I forget what it was called now, almost all of them have backed up. The ENIAC held pretty decent, but almost everything else has backed up that's been from Bad Idea that people paid for. This is now a $2 to $10 book. 9.8 will literally cost you $30 to $60. This just did not hold value at all. Turned into a bit of a dumpster fire that you're paying $30 for this and now you can get it for $2. Yeah, just not a good investment if you were chasing this one, which seems to be the case with most of these Bad Idea books. They have definitely for the most part backed up in value from the initial release hype. Next we have Black Widow #6, the 1 in 25 Raza variant. This is the first appearance of Lucy Guyan? I don't know how you pronounce that last name. I'm bad at that. When the NG, I don't remember how you're supposed to pronounce that. Anyway, maybe Gwen? Lucy Gwen? I don't know. Anyway, that book, we talked about it last week, was on the list at about $80. This 1 in 25 was, and we were talking about that it's actually up and a little bit of a straight cash book over the first 6 months. Well, by week 2 after release, this was going for 125 to 150, which overshot basically where it settled. It's now $100 to $125 book, like we talked about last week for raw copies. 9.8s are still going 250 to 350. So it's interesting. Like, if you got it that first week and you paid up to 80, then you did okay. But like, eventually it got to a point that it went too far and the market wouldn't support how high it did get. This character has been pretty interesting in this Black Widow run, but so we'll see how much they actually use her. But this book has definitely backed up a little bit from the peak here on week 2 after its release. Next, we have The Crow from 1989, the first appearance of The Crow. They put this on the list because a 9.8 went for an all-time high of $10,000. Now, this book is super hard to find in a high-grade condition. This is a super sensitive book, condition-sensitive book. Now you can find, you're paying raw copies. You could pay $200 to $1,500 for raw copies. Could not find a recent sale of a 9.8. The last sale was in June, so about a month after this, and it went for like $9,600. So, close to that $10,000 range. The highest grade thing I could find that sold really recently was an 8.5 that went for just under $1,000. So putting this as steady, worth it. You could argue it's just straight cash, but it doesn't look like it's really moved in the last 6 months or continued to climb. Long term, obviously, this is a straight cash book. People really love this book, especially if you can find it in high condition in high grade or really good condition, because it is very tough to do. Next, we have X-Men Academy number 5, the first appearance of Pixie. Not sure why, if people were specking on this character or what. Not sure what caused Pixie to be a character of interest back in the spring, but this jumped up to a $20 to $25 book. Now it's a $5 to $15 book, so this definitely turned into a bit of a trap. Again, not sure what was going on that made people interested in this particular character that caused her book to jump, but it did, and now it's definitely, you can find it for way less than what it was going back then. Next, we're going to move into our first, out of the comic buzz and into our first kind of DC. We're going to move into a DC show-related book. This is Green Lantern number 59, the first appearance of Guy Gardner. This hit the list because we got an announcement that Guy Gardner had been cast for the upcoming HBO show, which I feel like has been upcoming for like 3 years. I realize, special effects and everything, this was going to be a slow one probably to make, this Green Lantern show, but yeah, we're still waiting on it. I don't think they even have a release date scheduled for this thing yet, but that's what caused us to hit the list. Raw copies back then were going for close to $800 on average. A 7.0 hit an all-time high of $800. A 6.0 hit an all-time high of $575. A reminder that almost $800 on a raw copy varies greatly with grade, but that's kind of where the relatively high grades were kind of going. Now raw copies are sitting $100 to $600. So depending again on grade, most recent 7.0 sales were in the $550 to $625 range. Most recent 6.0 sale went for $450. So this one is backed up a little bit. It's been a bit of an I'll be back. We got casting news. Then we haven't heard anything for a while. So this one is backed up. Still a great book long term. Another important Green Lantern character. So there you go. Next, we have our kind of one MCU related book this week, and this is Mighty Avengers number 1. This is the first appearance of Monica Rambeau as Spectrum, the first time she takes the name Spectrum. People have been specking a lot on which name she's going to call herself, because Captain Marvel's already taken in the MCU. We know we're getting a Miss Marvel show. So is she going to be Photon? Is she going to be Spectrum? My money's always been on Photon because that was what her mom's call sign was, but maybe that was just a little bit of an Easter egg. So we'll see what they go with when she actually, either in the upcoming Miss Marvel show or when the Marvel's movie comes out with all of them in it. So we will see what they end up calling her. But back then, this caused the book to jump up to $15 to $20. A 9.8 hit 200. Now it's a $5 to $20 book. 9.8s are going for $2 to $250. I kind of call this steady and worth it. You can get occasionally a deal, but for the most part, it's still sitting at $15 to $20 range. But there are sales for a little bit less. And obviously the 9.8s have crept up a little bit, so that's why I went with worth it on this. Next, we have Star Wars number 23. This is the Jorge Molina 1 in 25 of this issue. And basically, people started speculating that this was the first Bad Batch cover. Never mind that this is not set at the same timing as when the Bad Batch show was. This was kind of a special squad of 5 guys. This was a Scar squad. So people were like promoting this as like the Bad Batch, even though it's not. But raw copies on this thing were going for $120 plus back then, during the release of the Bad Batch show. Now people are still asking pretty good money for this, but there's only been 2 sales in the last couple of months on eBay for this cover. One for 42, one for 70, both down. But for the most part, people have kind of wised up that this is not actually related to the Bad Batch, although it kind of looks like them, but this is years later. They're back working for the Empire. Doesn't make any sense that this would be the same guys, and it's not. So anyway, so this one definitely turned into a bit of a trap. People chasing something before they really did any investigation of whether or not it was actually what people were claiming. Our last book of the week is Star Wars Kanan, the Last Padawan, number 1. The first appearance of Kanan and the cameo appearance of Sabine Wren and Hera and Ezra Bridger and Chopper, and I forget the Zeb. I was trying to remember the other guy's name that's a part of that Rebels crew. Raw copies back then were going for $80. A 9.8 was going for $350. This is again just fresh speculation that Sabine and Ezra were coming to the Ahsoka show or to some of the new Disney Plus shows that are coming out. Now it's back then it was an $80 book. 9.8s were going for $350. Now it's a $40 to $60 book, but the 9.8s going for $250 to $350. So this has been a bit of an I'll be back. We may get some news here coming up soon, so maybe a decent time to buy one. We'll see if you're still looking for a copy, because if we get news, it'll probably jump again. We got the Disney Plus Day coming and D23 coming here in the next month, so potentially some news coming on some of these Marvel front and Star Wars fronts. So that was this week's list. Mostly another week where everything is down. It's been the trend. The market is definitely correcting some from the craziness back in the spring. We did have a couple books that continued to go up and a couple steady books, but for the most part, we were down again this week. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.